Welcome to Screen Chat. I'm Neil Bashins, and this is the show where I sit around with friends and talk about film and television and pop culture. Hey, welcome back to the couch. Warren Nightingale. With me, as always, is Warren.
Hey, Neil. Thanks for having me. And it is a wonderful time of year.
It is a wonderful time of year. And I'm just going to say, it's been a minute since we did this. I think, the show's sort of been on unofficial hiatus for 3 months.
Whoa. Okay.
I don't know, just scheduling and stuff like that and whatever. It's just been a while since we did one. So, it goes all the way back to September, I think.
It's been a crazy, crazy fall.
Anyways, we are back in the Screen Chat studio, a.k.a. my cheap but not cheap apartment on
This is a great studio. You know what? I look around, I see movie posters, I see a million Funkos. So this is a wonderful studio.
It is.
It's like Pop Culture Central.
I just hate breaking it down every week. I wish I just had a standing studio. All right. Anyways, so it's a wonderful time of the year because it's the end of the year.
Yeah.
It's been Christmas.
And not just end of the year.
End of a decade.
End of a decade.
End of a decade. So this is our, we're going to break down today. We're going to go through our top favorites of the past 10 years.
And it's been a great 10 years. So many good films. I don't know about you, but trying to create this list, I put down probably at least 100 films to start with and say, okay, here's ones I really enjoyed over the last 10 years, and slowly made my list down. But I'm quite impressed with actually how many really good films came out over the last 10 years.
Yeah, I had a lot of trouble too. When I was starting out, I had a huge list, and then to break them down was just an impossible task at times. Now,
it changes daily.
It does.
It does. Catch me, tomorrow I might say, this is a top 10. That might not be a top 10. Like, the difference for me in my top 10 and what is my top 50 is minimal. Like, you can make a case for number 38 as opposed to what I put down as my number 9, let's say. And so what I did was I started off with my big list. And the one thing I do, actually, when I do see movies, I will go on IMDb and I'll give sort of a little bit of a ranking, as well as make a couple of quick notes about my film experience of watching that film. And so that for me is
you've done this as an ongoing thing?
Oh, this is what
kidding.
I've always done this. Like, I've always, like, I'll go, now the one thing, not this isn't a criticism of IMDb, but I wish you could go, because you can rank out of 10, you give a film up to 10 stars. But you can only give it, you can't give it a half star, or you can't give it a quarter star. And so, when I made my list of films, I have, like 20 films that, I might have 8 out of 10 stars. Well, there's nuances between those films. And, like, for example, you and I on the same day saw Big Sick and as well as Dunkirk. Like, how do you compare
We saw those the same day?
We saw those in the same day.
Wow, that was a good day.
That was a great day. But how do you rank those two films? Like, they're very different experiences, very different stories.
There's you need some more nuance in a ranking. If you get and I don't stars, whatever system you're going to call it, 1 to 10 is 1 to 5 is definitely not enough. 1 to 10 is also tough, like you said. There's a ranking, but then also you're comparing art. Those two you brought up are so completely different films from each other.
Yeah.
That I would give them both, maybe a 4 out of 5, maybe even 5 out of 5, but
exactly,
or an 8 out of 10.
Yeah.
But people go, really, both of those? But they are both
very different.
Have enough merit that I would absolutely give them those scores. So again, when you're scoring art against itself, it's kind of a little bit of a lost cause there. But
yeah, I guess what I now that we're talking about, I guess what I try and do is I try to meet films on their own terms. Mm-hmm. Now that we're talking out loud, like if something like The Big Sick is a smaller personal story, I'll go into that world and experience it, and not that I would say judge it, but partake in that world and enjoy things of it and think about it, as well as if all of a sudden I'm on the beaches of French coastal waiting to get picked up with the boats, and all of a sudden I have a big film. I'm going to think about those ideas that are presented and how it's brought to me in that way. And I guess maybe that's what I do is I'll take a film for its own terms.
That's what you put it really well. That's how I would put it too. That I rank them on their own terms based on each one's individual film, because like I would never say that like truly great films like say like a Casablanca or something to compare it to like I don't know, a comic book movie, like a Marvel movie.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say that those are going to be equally as, I don't like using the word great, but they're not. It's a false equivalency. But at the same token, I would have Marvel movies that I would give the same star rating as I would give Casablanca or something else, but not necessarily an equivalency.
Yeah, no, exactly. And even in itself, like, rankings themselves and stars and things like you were talking about.
Very subjective.
Yeah, very subjective. And this is art. And, what's my favorite type of ice cream may not be your favorite type of ice cream. But you know what? Ice cream's still pretty awesome.
Ice cream is pretty awesome. So that's how you went through. You went through your old IMDb rankings,
exactly,
and kind of saw what you had given high rankings to.
Exactly, and then I sort of came up with these lists of I sort of clumped them together, and even just until 5 minutes before you hit play on here, I'm going, oh, is that really my number 10, or is that my number 10? This could be different tomorrow.
Okay, here's a quick side question for you then.
Yeah.
As you were going through all your old rankings there, did any jump out to you that you looked at, like, you go, wow, I gave that a 7 back then, and it's now either like, have any of them gone way up in your estimation or come way down in your estimation?
Yeah, to blanket it, I would say it's funny how time gives you a certain amount of process. Spoiler alert, not on my list. For my top 10 was The Artist, but in terms of looking at it, my film going experience, I gave it lots of love at the time I've seen it, and it's a film I really do love and enjoy. But I guess just in the my mindset at the current moment, in thinking about about these other films, I didn't necessarily put in my top 10 of the decade. Even though tomorrow, I who knows, I might say, yeah, definitely, it was such a unique film-going experience. It's a love letter to the old cinema and the era of it going from silent to talkies. It's brilliant. There's a lot of things going on in the film. Like, I definitely consider it a must-see movie. Like, everyone should see that film. Like, it has a lot of merit. But it didn't make my top 10 list. So
guess what?
What?
I've never seen it.
You've never seen The Artist?
Somehow I missed it at the time,
really?
and I just never. And it's not on any streaming service that I'm aware of right now.
It was on Netflix. I'm not sure. I have to double check to see if it was on Netflix. I remember seeing it. It popped up one day.
Once again, if it is, Netflix has utterly failed to properly, collate what I would like to watch, or have a weekly show like hosted by a couple of cinephiles or something that would talk about, or even a monthly show just talking about what's new.
What films do you have to see? Yeah, exactly.
Who knows? There's a market there, but sort of untapped.
And it'd be, we talked about this before, but oh my God, it'd be so inexpensive to shoot, and it's just extra content. I don't understand why they... here's a way to absorb, digest content in these in the era of streaming. I don't understand why there isn't more things out there like that.
You know what? I don't know.
There's an opportunity for us.
Netflix, Netflix is $4 billion in debt, so clearly they're a lot smarter than I am. So who knows? All right, before we jump into our lists, do you have any? And I'm just making this up. This is very free form, just shooting from the hip here. Throw out a couple that didn't make your list, but were almost there, but didn't crack the top 10.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, can I put you on the spot for that?
For sure. I'm going to go to my phone because I have my list.
Yeah, go to the list. Yeah.
Yeah. But what if they're on your list, though? Like,
you know what? Okay, I was just thinking that too. Sorry. Great. For the purpose of this, before we hit our lists, if you say something that's on my list or I say something, we won't talk about it now.
Okay.
Once we get into the lists, and we'll get to that in a second, how our lists are different from each other.
Yes.
Then we'll we'll talk about it if we hit it earlier on a list than the other guy. But for now, just don't spoil it. If I call out one, just don't say it's on your list or whatever.
Okay, sounds good.
So,
but when we get into our list, we'll start.
We'll mention.
That sounds good. The one I struggled with, I would say, the one that gives me the biggest pause was Dunkirk. Mm-hmm. Ultimately, I took it off my list. And I struggle because I do think it's a top 10 film, but I had 11 films that I really love. And of course, I have 100 films I really, really love. But it was one that's on there, off there, and ultimately it is off. And who knows? There's a few minutes before we start. Listen, who knows? I might change my mind in that moment. So.
Dunkirk?
Yeah.
Also just missed my list.
Really?
It was in my top 13, and those weren't necessarily, I didn't have them ranked like that. It wasn't number 13, but it was as I was breaking my list down, I busted it down, and at one point I had it to 13.
And there's so much going for that film.
And there is. Christopher Nolan is one of my top favorite currently working directors.
Yes,
and I think
agree.
he's still got more great things in front of him.
I agree.
And I love a lot of his movies for different reasons. They're not all necessarily identical.
Yeah.
But yeah, I loved Dunkirk. I loved its editing style. I loved its sound design. I loved its cinematic experience. Because Chris Nolan, beyond anything, always for me, if I go to a Chris Nolan film, it creates a cinematic experience.
Oh, it's a world unto
That's
itself.
my favorite.
Yeah.
That's my favorite way to experience film is in the cinema. So I'm always gonna. I'm always gonna like. I can't like. There's ones of his that are not as good as others, but I've yet to have a Chris Nolan film where I've had a bad experience or gone. I could have skipped that.
Oh, exactly. And I'll always go back and give it a second, third watch.
Yeah.
In fact, this was a film I went back to the theater to see it a second and third time.
Yeah, I think I saw it 3 times in the theater. And if it had a resurgence, like if it had a revival screening, I'd
go
go
see it
again.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And I love the structure. I love how he played with structure of telling a story over a week, a day, and an hour, and how it all sort of came together. And of course, the sound design is phenomenal. The cinematography is phenomenal.
Things that you cannot replicate at home.
Yeah.
Sorry to people who think you can. No, there are certain things.
It is a big screen experience.
I don't care how big your home TV is, unless you're about to tell me that your home TV is 50 feet high. No, it's not the same. And you can have maybe the sound. Some people have really, really killer sound systems set up. But even then, like, how can you compete? So.
And there's something about at the theater that demands your attention, where at home I'm competing with my phone. I'm competing with
it's a mental thing for me. It's like at home I will be, even when I'm watching a movie, I will from time to time pick up my phone, just like not even thinking about it, and have a look. In a theater, it never occurs to me. Or like I have to be very checked out of a movie before I start thinking about what's on my phone.
Exactly. What was close on your list? What was
another one that I had that was close. Another one that was in that top 13 I had at the end there. The Revenant.
Okay.
From Inarritu, directed by Inarritu, and it won Best Picture. It won won Best Director. It won Best Cinematography for his cinematographer, whose name I've just lost off the top of my head. It was DiCaprio finally cracked the seal and won an Oscar. But a fantastic, again, another director who creates a very cinematic experience, a very immersive experience, and I really, really loved it. But it didn't quite crack my top 10.
Yeah, it's funny. It's funny you mentioned that film right after we talked about Dunkirk, because to me they're both kind of in the same I don't know, in the same vein, I guess. A big movie experience, a unique world unto itself, cinematically incredible.
I would call them both, and this could be me misusing terminology, but I would almost call them both high budget art house films. That they are not, that I can absolutely understand.
Art house epic.
Exactly. Some people that are maybe not quite as, into the format, into the art as you and I would maybe have trouble getting entry to either one of these, where like Dunkirk is not, because of the editing and the storytelling structure of Dunkirk, it's not as easily accessible as, say, The Dark Knight or one of his other films.
Right.
And some of Nolan's films are like that and some aren't. Same with The Revenant. I think it's a very high concept art film that not everybody is going to love. You have to really just love looking at film and being content with, at times, it's like a moving painting. And you're just going to sit here and just absorb it. And it's not always like super driving the narrative forward during the film. And it's very about the art of cinematography, the art of acting, letting actors act, and so on and so forth.
Well, especially in particular, I would say for The Revenant, where it was all natural light.
All natural light
that were that they were capturing, and their shooting days were very small, and the film is gorgeous to look at. Yeah,
all except that one scene that I just popped in my head. I remember
what scene?
The buffalo.
That? Oh,
remember the oddly weird looking CGI buffalo that it's this one thing. How does it have this one Persian flaw? But so be it.
It's gorgeous.
I'm going to throw out another one. That just missed my list. That is just a personal favorite, completely different from these last two.
Okay.
Chef from director John Favreau. I love Chef. I found it late. I was late to the party. I found it a couple years after it came out on home video, but I absolutely loved it, and I've watched it probably 6 or 7, maybe even 8 times since I found it, because I think it's really fantastic. It's an extremely well written film. And well acted, everything about it is just super made, very well made, and I just love the story, and I can watch it again and again and again, and just really love it.
Yeah, as do I. It's a film I do admire, and as much as Jon Favreau says it's not about the filmmaking experience, it's certainly so parallel that it's hard not to read into that.
I will believe him in as such as I think possibly he didn't consciously write it about himself.
But it was coming from
absolutely,
that place.
If you look at it unconsciously, even whatever, it
was right after Cowboys and Aliens.
The parallels are just too much.
And the criticism he received from that after being hyped for the couple of films he did before that, and so he kind of goes on and of course in Chef, the main character who he portrays experiences something very similar. He kind of goes back to his roots for the joy of doing it, as opposed to trying to
doing it for art's sake rather than for the money.
Yeah, exactly. So I have a hard time digesting that film is not about that experience. And it is one of these films too. There's a few out there, such as Big Night, where you feel like you can taste the food and smell the food off the screen.
Oh,
it is
totally.
shot so well. It is not one to go on an empty stomach to see. That's for sure.
We could do a whole episode with Chef.
We should.
We'd have to get Alex
culinary.
in here.
We should do one on culinary, culinary experiences, cinematic culinary or something like that.
You know, a good idea. We're going to put together a few of them, and Alex has to be here. A frequent guest, Alex Watkinson, who is also a food blogger. He's got his awadeats.com, his food blog, and
Food to Die For.
Yeah, and he loved Chef. Like, I turned him on to Chef, and once I told him about it, I think he wrote an entire blog about Chef and what a fantastic experience it is.
Oh, fantastic! And we have to match, of course, pair it up with
we will. Maybe we'll eat something that night. The first show where we eat, because nothing listeners like better on a podcast than people eating and chewing while they're trying to talk. Believe me, it's awesome. All right, you want to throw one more out there that didn't quite make your list?
Let me take a quick
before we jump into our list.
And what throw it there? No animations. Even though what, I have like 3 in the top 15. Actually, even 4 in the top 20. Like, there's lots of really good animations over this past decade, such as Into the Spider-Verse. I really, really love.
Fantastic.
And it is so visually stunning to look at. There's another one like Loving Vincent, which was just an incredible experience. Kubo and the Two Strings, and probably one I'd love to plug just because I don't think it gets a whole lot of attention is Tower, which is a rotoscope film shot. Some of there's basically interviews as well as original footage from newscasts of the shooting that took place in Austin, Texas.
Okay, I know it. Yes, I've seen it. When you first started saying it, I didn't recognize it, but no, I have seen it.
Yeah, and it's just and I would say all those animated films are so uniquely animated. Like any of them could easily be in my top 10. But they all kind of fell short for whatever reasons. So if I was going to throw out any love, I would say to those really unique animated experiences of the last decade would certainly be true.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's jump into our lists proper here.
You bet.
And to start off this, because I'm always extremely organized and detailed, up until today when Warren showed up here, I had not actually discussed whether or not we were going to rank these like a countdown from 10 to 1 or what. And I did not, because I took the coward's way out and decided that I could not rank the films rather than making an actual stand. It was hard enough for me just to get to 10.
There you go.
And Warren, being a much more courageous I don't like saying critic because people always think of a negative connotation, but film enthusiast.
It might be a fool's journey, I think.
Maybe, but he decided to give him a number, and I think, as you've said today, and we've said many times, these could change depending on the day.
Oh, and
an hour from now, this could be a different order.
Exactly, and the difference between, like I said, number 9 and number 37 is just so minimal.
Okay, so you're going to be working yours backwards, counting from 10 down to 1.
So that works.
And I've ordered mine in the order they came out in. So I'm going to work backwards, starting with this year and working backwards towards 2010.
Fantastic. Well, kick us off.
So a decade being defined, I guess, I don't know if by film from 2010 to 2019. That's
Wicked.
the decade. That's 10 years.
And I hope people out there can follow as we go back and forth as you're counting down and I'm
counting up. Yeah.
Well, it'll work.
It's going to challenge people to pay attention.
That's right.
All 5 listeners will have to
we'll do a little
lot
time
of attention.
warping on you.
All right. So starting out this year, I actually had one off of this year, off of 2019, film late in the year. And I'm curious if you're going to guess this one or not, yay or nay. Mine was Jojo Rabbit.
That's what I thought you were going to pick. Yeah.
I love Jojo, and it has to be my favorite film of the year if it's on this list as well. I'd have to say right now.
Yeah.
It was neck and neck with me with another one that could probably, I don't know where it'll fall in history, but I also really loved this year, Ford v Ferrari.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, Jojo, I love Jojo Rabbit. I could see this 5 more times from director Taika Waititi.
Yeah.
Fantastic film about a little boy in Nazi Germany in the Hitler Youth. And it's a very hard satire but it's an anti-hate film, as Taika Waititi described it.
Yeah.
And it's fantastic. I absolutely loved it. I loved the comedy of it. And because it was using comedy to really look at a really serious issue, hatred and racism and whatnot, and the Holocaust, and to cast it in just an absolutely outrageous light and look at the ridiculousness of people that are like that.
I love the rewatch value of that film.
I liked it better the second time.
You and I saw it a second time.
I loved it the first time, and I liked it even better the second time, and I want to see it a third time.
And I think probably the first time watching it, I was a little cautious.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to say, okay, how is this going to work? His imaginary friend is Hitler, right? So, is this going to be in territory I'm going to be uncomfortable? Is this going to be in territory? And so I was kind of cautious. Where it did, of course, in the first time seeing it, won me over pretty quickly. Mm-hmm. Even just the introduction, having Hitler as Beatlemania, I'm like, okay, that's great, and to a certain degree accurate. In a sort of
a very twisted, dark analogy there, but
it works.
But
right?
It works.
And then of course the youth, I guess the youth camp and that really kind of I see where the tone is. I see how this is going to work, and now I can sort of fully invest. Whereas the second time, I was invested right out of the gates,
mm-hmm.
and like you, I enjoyed it even more the second time. And I have a feeling the more I watch it, the more I'm going to really appreciate it.
Even though it's only a few months old, I'm confident this film will stand the test of time.
Yeah. His films have high rewatch value.
They do. Taika Waititi is a genius filmmaker in terms of balancing tone. And not all his films are like this. This was his most challenging film. There's one I haven't seen that you're going to reference here.
Oh, Hunt for Wilder People, which is actually my favorite film.
Which I haven't had a chance to see yet, but I've heard strong things about.
It is one of those, again, just great humor founded within the story of that just some quirky, fun moments.
Now, he's genius at mixing tones.
Yeah. And I remember watching very early on one of his first films, Eagle versus Shark, mm-hmm. and I wasn't sure what to make of it, but just to see where his career has gone, and and I would say this film, like JoJo, is very timely in terms of let's take a look at the state of our world and the state of our political processes, and how does this film apply to that in a certain way, right?
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah. But
some great humor in it, some funny lines.
He is such a funny guy, and the comedy in all his different movies, like the comedy in he made probably my favorite Marvel movie, Thor Ragnarok.
Yes,
and because he realized that the character, he was the first person to acknowledge that the idea of Thor as a superhero, the literal Norse god of Thor let me say that again. Yeah. The literal Norse god of thunder as a superhero that comes to Earth to fight crime and save the world is so absurd. Yeah. And he's leaned into that absurdity and ended up with the best Marvel movie.
And I would say that has the highest rewatch value.
It does.
You can enjoy it the second, third time.
I saw it twice in one day.
It hums so quickly, and the jokes come fast and furious. It's a fun.
Another film of his that was probably in my top 20 for the decade is What We Do in the Shadows, mm-hmm. which is a hilarious mockumentary about vampires, and I've watched it probably 20 times. And
comedies of the decade, and that mm-hmm. was on it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. So now switching over from 2019, my yearly countdown. What's your number 10, Warren?
Okay, my number 10 is. Let me find my list here. Another Earth from
Another Earth
from 2011. Have you seen this film?
We saw it together.
Okay, good. Okay, I thought we did.
So this
is going back 8 years.
This is with Britt Marling, right?
Yes,
I forget
that's
who directed it, but the actress was Britt Marling, and they spot the an identical Earth on the far side of the sun.
One,
right?
Yeah. Mark Harles, it was the writer director of it, and again, this is where making this list where I was trying to process, going, okay, there's certain aspects, and trying to meet the film on its own terms. This isn't a film for everybody, but what I really love and appreciate about this film was not only did it take its time and let the process of what the characters are going through and kind of the reason why they got together and how they met sort of drive the story, but it really pays off huge in the last scene, and it makes you walk away and think about it in terms of how to exactly unpack that experience. And so and you asked earlier, hey, look at your list. Was there any kind of surprises? And I looked at my list and I gave it a really high rating. I'm like, okay, why did I give that a high rating? And of course, kind of looking back at my notes and thinking about the film, it was not only the cinematography and it was really grounded in some real strong emotions, but I think it was the intelligence of kind of how it came together at the end. And kind of what is that saying about the kind of the human experience that really sort of connected to me. So I kind of made sure it was in my top 10, which unfortunately dispelled a few other films I really love.
That's going to happen. Yeah. It was not on my top 10, but absolutely fantastic film.
Yeah.
And like you said, it's made in that last scene.
Yeah.
And it's very well written, well structured and edited, very well directed, obviously. But it's like really the acting for me, and thinking back on it now, and I haven't thought about it in a long time or watched it in a while, but just thinking back, Britt Marling is the lead, and I forget the name of the guy who's in the secondary role. I've seen him in a lot of things. He's
Willem
Mapother?
Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah, that's like Tom Cruise's cousin.
Yeah.
Legit. But
really?
Yeah, that's Tom Cruise's cousin.
I didn't know that.
You will notice him turn up as sometimes
a
bad guy,
or
heavy in a lot of Tom Cruise films.
In a sheriff fight scene or something.
He was also on a very memorable episode of the real CSI with William Peterson. Bizarre here. I'm like, this is the Thomas Mapother podcast. I'm weirdly know a lot about this dude. And I'm like, yeah, that guy.
I'm impressed now.
And but it took me a second to pull his name out of the air. But they're at it's really built on them, and they carry it. Like, they have to get you to that last scene.
That's right.
And if you don't stay invested in that film to the last scene, but if you do,
it's worth it.
It's so fantastic, that very last scene, and really punches and then retroactively makes the whole movie so great.
Yeah. And you walk away thinking about, and it sort of comes together in a way that, oh, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Because and it's hard to not spoil it.
Well,
so I'm not going to say more than that.
Yeah, we're not going to run down the whole film here.
Yeah, but
it's worth a watch.
I
it's
love
worth
the way it
2
makes
hours
you
of your
really
time.
unpack kind of why it's the way it is. So, yeah.
All right.
All right, let's flip back to you.
Back to me. All right. Counting down. Now moving up to 2018. And this is a film that was controversial, not because of the film itself, but because of what it represented. And this is Roma.
Oh, nice.
From Mexican director Alfonso Cuarón.
Yeah.
It won Best Foreign Picture at the Oscars. It won Best Director.
Beautiful film.
It should have won Best Picture. This one was the controversy, was the Netflix thing.
Yeah.
Because it was a Netflix film and it got a very limited theatrical release because of Netflix's all their politics and their release model. Then the Academy fighting back against Netflix, and it's art getting caught in the middle of people fighting over something ridiculous.
I like that.
And
how you articulated that.
And you know what? And I was also caught up in it, that at the time leading into the Oscars, I had kind of painted myself into the camp of going, I think it's a fantastic film, but I don't think it should get the Oscar because I don't think Netflix should get awarded. And then subsequently to that, I realized I was wrong. And a friend of mine a couple days after the Oscars asked me, what'd you think of the Oscars? How'd you go? And I was, at the time, I was like, you know what? Pretty much loved everything about it. Can't really argue with anything. And then she questioned me. She kind of called me on it, said, even Best Picture? And at the time I was like, no, I think Green Book should have won. And not to take nothing away from Green Book.
Yeah.
Roma was the Best Picture last year.
I would disagree.
And I think, and I too got caught in between that line that I was like, no, I'm going to stand on this side of it because I think Netflix is trying to ruin theatrical film and I won't reward them. But what am I not? I'm rewarding a distributor. I'm punishing a film because I don't like the distributor, which has nothing to do with that's
rather
like,
than taking the film for itself.
If,
right?
if the Mona Lisa hung in a shitty shed with a leaky roof, it'd still be a great painting. Right? So
that's right.
So that was one. But Roma, gorgeous picture.
Yeah.
I loved
Big
it was in black and white. Any frame of that picture titled films, because I'm finding myself reading rather than paying attention to the performances.
Okay.
And maybe 15 minutes in, I don't think I even was reading anymore. And I was able, even though I had the language barrier, I don't speak Spanish. Then I can't remember them all now, but also subsequently to seeing it, I then saw it was so bizarre in our day and age. This is how it came out, but it was a series of tweets by director Guillermo del Toro.
Okay,
talking about his impression of watching it, he dissected and pointed out all these many things.
Amazing things, I'm sure.
Del Toro is an incredibly talented director too, and him pointing out all these things that were going on, I was like, "Oh shit! Oh, whoa!" And I sort of went back and gave it a second watch, knowing all these things. Observing, man, like
so
Cuarón is such a genius director. Alfonso Cuarón is such a brilliant director, so deserving of that award of best director last year. It should have also been best picture, but again, we're handing out trophies for art.
Yeah,
but
I so wish I could have saw that in the big theater.
Me too.
I really.
It did show here in town at Cinematheque, and we sort of
local art house.
We sort of screwed up, and we didn't make it to it, and I really regretted it too.
I kick myself for not doing that, and it's actually kind of funny because it's not in my top 10. However, it is close, and I'm wondering if I would have saw it in a big screen, if I would have had a different impression of it. That's actually, that's something for me to think about as a takeaway, because I do love his films. Like, Children of Men is just phenomenal.
Oh, yes.
It's one I absolutely love, and
But this is next level.
Yeah. Oh, I would say so. Like, well, it's a different film. Like, it's I would say it's probably a more personal film. Like, this is, he probably. His own experiences is
I think he did say it was quite a lot of it was harvested in his mind from his own experiences,
and I get that sense watching it, as well as a film like Children of Men, where you're kind of, it's more of a political environmental kind of
science fiction.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it's a warning if nothing else, and it's rooted in a good story rooted in that. But again, his cinematography in his films is just breathtaking. And of course, the human experience in this one is particularly strong. So that's a great pick.
Great film. All right, fire away. What's your number 9?
Well, we've talked about already as one that just missed your list.
Okay.
The Revenant.
The Revenant.
Yeah,
oh, fantastic.
2015. This is my number 9 pick. And, it was one I was kind of, for me, it was sort of pitted against Dunkirk a bit in terms of, I love both these films. They're both big films, film to be enjoyed in the theater. But I gave the little nod to this one just simply because it was such a unique, and of course they're both unique experiences, but the cinematography was just mind-blowing. We talked already, it was directed by Inarritu, who's done some great work over the last decade. And of course, Lubezki was on a 3-year run.
Lubezki, that's it, yeah.
Yeah, he was on a 3-year run. For
Best Cinematography Oscars.
Yeah. And here...
What was it? It was Gravity, this, and Birdman?
Yeah. And so, I don't know, I just felt like this film... I can't imagine how this would have come together in a way. There's so much going on, and there's so much to it, and of course a great cast that I would love to see this film again. And I do think it is unto itself an achievement for all kinds of reasons. So my number 9.
Fantastic.
Yeah, we talked lots about. We talked some about it already.
We sort of did
so
already covered a lot there.
Yeah,
but sorry, I harshed on your thing. Not harshed on. I stole your thunder earlier there. But
way to not make your list, Neil.
Okay. All right. Shooting back over here. I'm skipping back to 2015. I thought I had a 2017 in here, but perhaps I didn't. All right. Wouldn't it be funny if I only had 9 on my list? And I can't even count on my own podcast.
Hey, top 9 of the decade.
Top 9 of the decade. Way to go.
Doesn't have quite the same.
Well, see, by not ranking them, I can go ahead and throw an extra one in at the end and save my ass here.
Yeah, doesn't have quite the same sound though. Plus, top 9.
Through the magic of editing, I can fix all things.
That's true.
One thing I've learned from the podcast, like just doing that, man, I can change conversations. Boom. Yeah. Come on my podcast. You'll never be president. Okay. Jumping back to 2015.
Okay.
One of my and like if I was ranking them, this would have a good chance of being up to number one. A movie I love, 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 love. From director Damien Chazelle.
Oh, nice.
One of two times he's on my list. La La
nice.
Land.
Oh, wow.
I love La La Land.
Yeah.
It is such a. I saw this 3 times in 8 days.
It's a great film.
It is. I saw it. It was my. I have an annually. I go to at least one film on Christmas Day. It was my 2015 Christmas Day movie. That was the first time I saw it.
Yeah.
I went back, I think, 2 or 3 days later and saw it a second time.
Okay.
And I also went and saw it on New Year's Eve. This is how I closed out the year 2015, sitting in the cinema.
Wow.
Watching La La Land because I thought it was such a gorgeous film. I saw it.
Great experience.
I saw it a 4th time later in its theatrical run. I went and saw it here at Assiniboine Park at Movies in the Park the following summer.
Fun.
I love La La Land. Damien Chazelle is a genius director. I think this is only his 3rd film.
Yeah. Well, when he won the Oscar, he won it as the youngest director ever to win the Oscar.
Yeah, no doubt. And talented guy. I love Emma Stone. I love
Ryan Gosling.
Ryan Gosling, yeah. And I love everybody in this film, and I just love this film so much. And I love musicals, and this is a musical in style, not like a thing like they've adapted a stage play like a Cats or like a Les Miserables or something like that, but just like this is like an old Hollywood musical.
Yeah.
And like something like a throwback to a Singing in the Rain. And
yes.
And you don't see these very often, and I just done this well, and I just loved the shit out of it.
I have a very strong affection for this film too. It is on my list.
Oh, fantastic.
So, when we get to that part, we won't talk as much about it. But I have a very strong affection for it as well.
Then why don't we leave your half till we get to where you have it?
No. We're talking about the film now.
Let's pick apart. Okay,
I don't know. Like, it's as you wish. It's actually it's your show.
Yeah,
you
no,
tell me what you want to do.
No. Fire it now. That makes more sense to talk out.
Well, yeah, and for all the things that you've already mentioned, is things that I obviously love about that film too. And there's a sequence at the end that just blew me away. And I don't want to give spoilers here in case if anybody.
This is nearly a 5-year-old movie. Go ahead, spoil it. This is ridiculous.
Okay.
Are you talking
about? So
I
warn you. This is going to be a spoiler.
Yeah. Okay.
But I think I really do need to talk about this scene. When she comes back into the bar and he is playing, and all of a sudden it cuts to a montage of them being together.
The daydream sequence.
Love
it.
It is incredible. It is such a love letter to the old style Hollywood musicals that you talk about, but it's done in such a modern way that it doesn't feel that it's inaccessible. And it all of a sudden, as I was watching this, I went, oh my God, this is him talking about if we were together, this is what our life would be like. And so we are catching a moment in time of this exchange of look that they're having through this montage. And it is absolutely incredible and beautiful. And it is, I think, one of the best moments probably of the last decade, that scene. Of course, in La La Land, there's so many great scenes that are magical and just, joyful. It's a very joyful film.
That scene you reference is probably the scene that puts it over the top and takes it from just a movie I really, really love to being on my list. Yeah. Because I don't know if everybody does this or if I'm like a weirdo, but I will sometimes sit and not reminisce, that's the wrong word, but just think, what if things have been different, and I will sometimes sit and imagine how my life would have been different if I had turned left instead of right. And at times, when I'm confronted with something reminds me of a pivotal moment in my life of what happened, what if I would have made a different decision there? And I will sit there and think about, oh man, and be a little bit melancholy about it maybe. Yes. And you kind of go, I wonder how that would have worked out. But then you just kind of you accept and move on. And that moment spoke to me so much in that film.
And that's what that moment's all about. I think it encapsulates all those feelings and it puts there on the big screen for us to watch. And the characters have so much chemistry and so much, the pure joy of these numbers are just come off the screen and what they're dedicated towards. Of course, it's the Hollywood musical. It's just a magical film.
I know, I love it, and I would go see this in. I could say this up and down for all my lists that I would go see them in theater again in a heartbeat.
Oh yeah,
anytime they've ever popped up at a revival screening, I would absolutely go see any of these again.
Okay, so where does that put us now?
You were up next.
Okay, so now I'm going backwards.
I just chipped another one off your list.
Yeah, exactly. So we'll skip that one when it comes to.
And I just want to say to anybody listening, I did not have we have not discussed our list with each other today. These are all top secrets. So I am not intentionally just chipping stuff off Warren's list just to mess with them here.
Yeah. Thanks.
Much as that's a thing that I would do.
Yeah, I was going to say sure.
I am not in this situation doing that.
Did you peek at my list?
I can't read your handwriting.
Okay, right. So my number 8 is a French film.
Oh, okay.
Called The Untouchables. It came out in 2011.
I'm familiar with it, but I have not seen it.
It was remade in Hollywood. We won't talk about that film so much. Actually, I can't because I haven't seen it. But this is just such a tender, loving film. Essentially, the core of the story is Philippe. He is a character who's very rich. He has a life in a wheelchair, and he hires a personal assistant. I believe the character's name is Driss. And the two of them forged this friendship because Driss it comes from not a place of wealth, but he also has access to this very rich lifestyle that this other character has, which the main character has basically closed himself off to kind of. Even though he has great taste in life, he's kind of shut himself down to feeling, whereas Driss sort of gives him that avenue. Mm-hmm. And so they sort of have they form this co-relationship of kind of experiencing life to the fullest through each other. And it is a beautiful film. It is, one of the most successful foreign films of the last decade. I believe it's still on the top 10 all-time list for non-English speaking box office.
No kidding.
Yeah, it is just a great experience. Of course, the Hollywood remakes with Kevin Hart and
Bryan
Cranston.
As soon as you start talking about it, I recognize. I'm like, oh yeah, this is the thing that was made with Cranston.
I haven't seen it, but I have so much affection for the original that
kind of don't want to.
I don't want to.
No. Yeah. Once you've seen the Mona Lisa, you don't need to see somebody else paint that lady, right? No.
Even if it's hanging in somebody's shed.
Exactly, with a leaky roof. I've got one. Yeah, you've already got one. You didn't need the remake, but. Yeah. So and I have.
Have you seen that film?
I've never seen it. No, okay. I didn't have a chance to.
If you get a chance,
where is it available?
Last I checked,
I don't want to advertise for streaming services.
I believe it's Netflix.
Netflix has it.
Yeah,
okay.
I believe Netflix has that one. I'd have to check it again.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. So where was I now?
Well, 2015.
I screwed my countdown. You know what? You
jumped to 2015.
Yeah, I did.
I was going to say anything. But...
I missed one. I missed 20. I do have 2016, and I missed. Yeah, so I'm bouncing back and forth. So I've now broken all the rules of my own list here.
They were time jumping.
Yeah, whatever. I'm like this, like a Nolan film. I'm playing with time.
Exactly.
Here. Nolan loves
is it a week? Is it an hour? Who knows?
My whole list is a tribute to Chris Nolan, one of my favorite filmmakers. All right. Did this come out in 2016? Yes, it did. In 20, and then I thought I didn't even have my research right, but all of a sudden I realized I do. 2016. Warren, I love crime dramas.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
I love heist films and I love crime dramas. And this movie has became an instant classic for me that I'm like, I love this movie. And at the time I saw it, this is gonna be rewatchable, and it has proven to be rewatchable. I rewatch this movie every few months.
Wow.
Hell or High Water, from director David Mackenzie, with Chris Pine and Ben Foster and Jeff Bridges. And now I've lost the name of the other actor that plays his Jeff Bridges' partner.
Oh, I can see his face, but I don't know the actor's name.
I love this film. It's a great crime drama. It's a great family film. Like, it's about two brothers robbing banks to try to save the family farm. It plays very real. Like, a lot of times, even in crime dramas, like even ones I like, the characters can tend to be like, become a little bit phony, like in something like, say, like The Town, like
right.
Ben Affleck is really painted as like, I use the expression the hooker with the heart of gold, and he's not very realistic as a bank robber. These guys, it feels real. Their motivations feel real. It all feels really honest, and I just love the shit out of this movie.
It's such a great experience. Like the not only the chemistry between the brothers themselves, but just how likable all the actors are. Like all the characters. I mean, just how likable this film is.
It's also a contemporary Western. So then it hits two of my genres for me, that I love Westerns and I love contemporary Westerns. And also I just love crime dramas. And and Jeff Bridges, who doesn't love a great Jeff Bridges? Like, he's just chewing it here, but he's so perfectly, and he's given that space to do it, like to be a little bit over the top and be this slightly outrageous character, but not so outrageous that he's unbelievable. And then there's a few human moments where Jeff Bridges really pulls in, like when he loses his partner and stuff like that then he becomes a very it excuses the rest of the, if he's a little over the top in the rest of the film, it's kind of like, that's how he is as a person, and it would not be impossible to meet this person in the real world. That I feel, when I watch it, I feel like all these people, all these actors could be real. These characters could be real people.
Yeah, and it's not on my top 10, but it's a film I do like quite a bit, and it was up there somewhere. I don't know exactly where I placed it, but it is one that I really enjoyed.
Yeah,
and I need to see again. Actually, I've only seen it once in the theater.
Really? Yeah. See, this is one that I've probably watched it 8 times.
Wow.
I love this movie so much. I can just put it on. It can be a background movie for me, that if I'm doing something else but I just want something on, I can put it on and check into my favorite scenes, but I end up sitting there staring at it for like 45 minutes at a crack and not cleaning the house. Or I will just sit down sometimes going, yeah, I feel like watching it. I almost watched it the other day, and there's a good chance I'll watch it before the end of this Christmas break again, just because I love watching it so much.
Well, the chemistry between Chris Pine and Ben Foster is just amazing.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I almost watched it last night, except I started too late.
Really? Yeah, you do really like this film, apparently.
What was I texting you about last night? What did I watch yesterday?
Oh, wasn't it about the...
It was like another crime film.
It was a Hallmark film, wasn't it? Where the two...
Switched at Christmas.
Switched at Christmas.
At Christmas.
No. Oh, it was a Herbie movie. It was one of the
No Country for Old Men.
Oh, there we go.
Okay, I'm gonna do a throw in here. I almost watched it again last night. Here, I'm gonna do a real thing. Edit here.
There's some great bits there, though.
I almost watched it again last night because I found on Amazon Prime another one of my favorites, but is outside of the release date, so would not make this list, was No Country for Old Men.
Great film.
And it struck me that this would be a great double feature.
It would be a great double feature. Yeah, the two films would very much work in tandem together. I could see that.
But yeah, so I will quite possibly watch Hell or High Water.
Neo-Western, the modern Western tales, right?
Yeah, again, another crime drama and a contemporary Western, and the
cat and mouse chase, all that stuff.
Yep.
Yeah.
So that was Hell or High Water.
Yeah.
All right, over to you.
All right, so this is my number 7 pick, and this is a film we've talked about on here probably ad nauseum if anybody actually listens to this podcast. 8th grade.
8th grade! We covered it extensively on 2 episodes from last year.
And so this will be 3 now. We're going to be talking about it. But
Elsie Fisher, we love you.
Oh, I love that film.
Yep. Bo Burnham, we love you.
Just to consider this as his first film and to knock it out of the park like he did dramatically, to make a film about a girl at the end of grade 8 going through the experience that she has. And it's in one way it's very modern because, she's dealing with social media, but yet I can relate to it from my childhood of, almost 35 years ago or 40 years ago, whatever it is, if I sit down and do the math.
I would never have guessed it in grade 8 you were an awkward white girl.
Well, but this is what I'm saying is that she goes through experiences where I'm like, oh, I can relate to that, and so
who can't? But
it's individual, it's universal, it is amazing. There's some just strong scenes.
I think last time we were discussing,
resonate.
I had that same thing too. That as I was like a nerd and stuff like that in school, so just I felt as well like as an outsider.
Exactly, and it's a very strong directorial piece. I love the simplicity of the camera work, and Elsie Fisher was just phenomenal. She
you cannot give enough praise to Elsie Fisher
for that film, and I just it is a film that I absolutely loved, and I sat there just blown away with it, and I guess if I was to think about kind of our lists in general. Sometimes you don't need the big story, the big special effects, but if you can, find the root of what a good story is and just let it happen. Give it space and time to really tell it honestly. That's what this film is. Like, there's even in the quietest of moments, in some of the scenes that are not necessarily big scenes, there's such an honesty to it that it feels real. Like, it feels, but yet it doesn't feel real in the way that you would say that is, it could be thrown away. It does push along the story and push along her and what she's experiencing and what her challenges are in these last few weeks of her in grade 8. And I love the characters.
Now, it's something I do want to see again. I haven't seen it in a while.
Yeah.
I do want to watch it again. It didn't make my top 10. It was probably in my top 20. It was on my break day. It didn't, and again, what am I picking here? Who's my favorite kid? But
Sophie's Choice.
Very Sophie's the choices here. Two scenes in particular.
Yeah.
Really stuck out to me, and I like when I really like when a movie can somehow inadvertently relate to me, and not. We already talked about how relating is feelings like an outsider and whatever in school and stuff like that. But a thing that can relate to me, and there's actually probably several times this happens to me, like when she's having dinner with her dad.
Yes.
And the dad is just desperately trying to relate to her and trying to talk to her and whatever. And I'm going to have to, when I watch it again, I'm going to think on it more. But it occurred to me in a weird roundabout way that this past year, it's coming up on a year that my dad passed away. And after he did, for a while, I thought just thinking back on my entire, relationship with my dad, good times and bad times and stuff like that. And just looking back, I saw that there were times that I realized he was trying to talk to me and trying to relate to me and couldn't always.
Oh, wow.
And in here, the character Kayla, played by Elsie Fisher, is sometimes sort of putting a wall up, kind of and not necessarily to keep her dad out, but it's just
well, she's trying to figure out who she is.
She's trying to figure out who she is, and you don't always necessarily.
She's 13 years old, 14 years old. That's what.
And so there's
do.
times when you just want to figure it out for yourself.
Yeah.
But then from that flip side, on the other side, that the dad is just trying to help her and looking back, I know that there was times when my dad was just trying to help me or trying to relate to me somehow, or trying to have so
it might resonate with you in a different kind of way.
I don't have kids, but I can kind of see, I've seen through, my friend Alex with his relationship, because he has 4 kids of varying, very wide array of ages. So you can see, at the same time, I can see his little ones where the world revolves around them to where his older ones, they're not pushing them away, but there's definitely things of they're doing things for themselves, and sometimes they have to make choices for themselves. And so I can kind of, as an outsider, I can watch him, and I'm close with all his kids too. So I can watch him, I watch this sort of struggle sometimes of him trying to find that ground of,
the commonplace,
I hope I'm not, I hope I'm not speaking out of turn here, Alex, if you're listening to this, but I watch him try to find that balance of the father trying to help his kids, but also knowing that his 2 older ones are of that age of where he has to start letting them go to figure it out for themselves. And so I remember so after I saw this film, looking back, just thinking this year, in the wake of my dad's passing, thinking, I was thought about a lot of those things, and I started to recognize that there was times when I know he was just trying to do that, and I didn't appreciate it in that moment, but you can't have it back. So those moments in this film retroactively related to me. Another thing I really love when film does is when it makes me feel something against my will. And it can be a good thing, when something just happens, it just makes me so, oh my God, this is crazy, or when it can make me cheer out loud. Another film this year that did not make my list of the decade or of the year or whatever, but really fantastic film, and it did a lot of things for me that related to me personally, was the Avengers Endgame film. So the moment when Captain America catches Thor's hammer.
Right.
I cheered out loud in a cinema as if my sports team had just kicked a field goal or scored a touchdown. And I was like, yeah! And if I would say, pull myself out of there going, oh yeah, I really like this movie, but that it could actually make me cheer out loud. Yeah. But I also I really appreciate a film when it makes me feel uncomfortable against my will.
The backseat
scene.
Yeah.
That I felt so uncomfortable in the theater watching this going, oh my God, that. And so that Bo Burnham as a director And Elsie Fisher as an actress were able to, and I'm not saying it's in a negative connotation, but manipulate my emotions and to get me feeling a visceral physical reaction where I felt knots in my stomach when we sat in that theater watching that scene.
Yeah, and
they pushed it, and I think they so perfectly balanced that it pushed it right to an edge of where I was feeling almost physically sick.
Yeah,
and then resolved the situation in a realistic, believable way, and got you out of it, and the relief I felt afterwards. But that film, like when I have a reaction to that in a theater of this is not a ride that I necessarily wanted to go on. But it took me, and I also retroactively, after the fact, felt that I trust Bo Burnham now, as if that I would watch another film of his and trust him, because sometimes a filmmaker could then just say, like, intentionally, in the negative connotation, do things that manipulate your emotions. Sometimes I feel, rightly or wrongly, that they'll do stuff like some filmmakers or some films will do a thing like they'll inflict violence on an animal, like a dog, just to get the audience to hate the character or get you in a place. And I'm kind of like, you didn't need to do that. Where this, I did not feel manipulated in a negative connotation. I feel like they just really took you on a ride. And I hope I eloquated that correctly.
Absolutely. And that was the thing about Bo Burnham being, us watching a film of his for the first time. We don't know where he's going to be taking us. And so part of that experience is going, oh my God, you use the word trust. Like, can we trust him? Mm-hmm. And there's certainly filmmakers out there who, like, I still enjoy their films, but I know going in that, we might be seeing something where I don't completely trust them with the material that they have in terms of being, either, responsible, truthful, those type of things. And so then you're guarded up. Whereas, he in that scene, it is just, again, an incredible scene where you can see herself in a situation and her react as a kid, right? In what could potentially be a very adult situation, which was just, tugs on the heartstrings. Right, because that's what that's what her story is. Like, she's still a kid, but she's growing into these adult emotions, and she's trying to find her place in the world. That is probably way more confusing than any John Hughes films, but yet it really emulates some of those feelings of nostalgia of those era of those type of movies. So,
I think this will age better, though. To be honest with you, I enjoy John Hughes films, but I think part of my enjoyment is that I grew up with them. Yeah. So I can see them in their, like, contextually, I can look back and realize they're of their time, when now some of the things, and so we're going to take a little bit of a tangent here, but some of the things in John Hughes films that now we go back and, they haven't aged well.
But I would say that's the societal type elements in the John Hughes movies. Like things that, you would never say that in this day and age, or you wouldn't treat a young girl in that kind of way.
They're of their time.
They're certainly of their time. But I do think what John Hughes does do is he does capture that sort of feeling of what it's like to be a teenager.
He did capture the '80s teenager experience very well.
Certainly I was surprised. I caught a John Hughes documentary a couple of years back.
Is that the one where they're looking for him?
Yeah,
those people talking.
Yeah. And they're interviewing
townspeople and
including current teenagers saying that they find that there's more truth in a John Hughes movie than there is
in a lot of
a lot of more contemporary teen films, which I certainly can understand, because there's certainly that feelings of what it's like to be a teenager that kind of emulates through that. But you are right, though. The John Hughes films are,
I didn't mean to run them down. I think I was trying to get to, and maybe I didn't quite get to that. I didn't make it all the way to the point, or maybe I just didn't. Yeah. I kind of got lost in the road there. That I think 25 years from now,
eighth grade will still be a great.
Yeah. And it won't have been a victim of times changing around it. Like,
that's a good point.
Where John Hughes films they're of their time.
They're very much
contextually they're great, but out of context they can be a little jarring. Yeah. But where this won't be. Yeah. But anyways.
Okay.
All right. Where were we? Oh my God. Here's one. I feel bad because I feel like I'm about to knock one off your list again. Possibly. I think there's
I'm sure you are. I'm sure now as we get down to the list, we're probably going to be like back and forth.
Yeah. Okay. So back in 2015 again. Now zipping back to 2015, and this film. This was another one of my Christmas films.
Okay.
This is my Christmas 2015 film, and the The Big Short from director Adam McKay.
Oh, nice.
I love The Big Short.
Yes.
It is a film that has a ton of exposition, where usually, I prefer a little bit more of a narrative-driven thing.
Yep.
But the subject matter just fascinated me. Adam McKay's filmmaking style, his storytelling style fascinates me, and I want to see more, and I have enjoyed more films, another film from him, and I'm looking forward to more of them, but I just really love The Big Short, and it's another one that I can watch again and again. I think I've watched it 7 or 8 times. I watched it again about 3 weeks ago.
Oh, nice.
And not because I was doing research for this, just because every once in a while when I'm scrolling through and having that, that decision paralysis you have when you're scrolling through the streaming service, and all of a sudden there it was. I'm like, yep, Big Short, boom, gone. It's like one of those outs for me. When I can't figure out what to watch, I see that, hit that button and go for it.
Nice.
And I just love it. And I know that you're a fan of it as well.
Oh, I'm a big fan of it. Surprisingly, it's not on my top 10 list, though.
Really?
It's not. No, I know.
Holy, I thought for sure that was going to be on your list.
It was one of those ones where I was struggling to find a way to get it there, and at the end of the day, it didn't. Adam McKay, certainly, I think has found his unique voice in his last 2 films. It is, for all the reasons that you said.
It is a 2015.
It is a great watch, and all the fun. The one thing about Adam McKay is, he brings a lot of fun to the satire. It's certainly the turn of direct addresses to the camera, and now here's a cameo by so and so doing.
I'm going to correct myself. Sorry, before we go on.
Yeah, sure.
La La Land was 2016, not 2015. That's where my mistake was.
Okay.
So they were both Christmas movies for me. I just knew I hadn't seen them the same day. So, sorry. Back to the regularly scheduled talking about Adam McKay. Sorry, Warren.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Basically, I was just to reiterate, I think he's found a very nice style in both The Big Short, which then of course he carried over to Vice, and it's a fun watch. I think it has lots of high rewatch value. And where the American housing market's going, there may even be a sequel. So
you never know. But I'm looking forward to his someday eventual Trump film.
Yeah, there we go. I'll buy a ticket to that one too.
Possibly his Firefest film. Name it. But if you want a guy to dissect a political or a social issue that was a news event happening and tell an entertaining way to maybe tell a story that otherwise could be very dry, Adam McKay.
Yeah.
All day.
Nice. Now,
all right.
I wonder if I'm going to knock one off your list now.
I think you might be about to, so you fire away.
So this is my number 6.
Like you said, we're getting into the deep water now. So
actually,
I'm pretty sure the top of our lists are going to be a lot of overlap here.
Exactly, and I know that. Actually, I know that I will be knocking one off your list because you did say that Damien Chazelle is also going to be making another appearance, and so for my number 6 pick is Whiplash. 2014. So many good elements.
Not my tempo.
So many good things to say about this film, and for me, it is when the night I saw this film, it was just it encapsulates my favorite film going experience. Basically, looking, going, okay, I want to see a film. Oh, I don't know much about this one. It looks like an indie film. Oh, I heard there's good things in festival, and that's all I knew about it. Sometimes, and we've talked about this before, you see a trailer and you get everything. You get the entire story and all the beats and everything like that in the trailer, and you're like, oh, okay. And so you're kind of what you're going to experience. And so when I saw Whiplash, I did not know what I was going to experience, and when I saw it, I went, oh my God, this is great. It was such a wonderful film. Love so much about it. Love the music. Love the cinematography. The editing is spectacular. And probably for me, when we look about the top films of the decade, I think that is one to be looked at in terms of editing, in terms of it, because it makes the film. And of course the cinematography, finding him just peeking over the drums at moments, and that whole scene where you talk about not my tempo, we break that down shot by shot. It is absolutely, the cinematics of it is absolutely wonderful and very enjoyable. And of course, anybody who's a J.K. Simmons fan, for him to give that performance,
best supporting actor,
and get an Oscar for that is just tremendous. So anyway, anything you want to jump in on that? I think I had heard of it. I don't even recall seeing a trailer. Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure you repped it to me pretty hard.
Yeah.
And then it was playing at the cheap theater.
Oh, okay.
I missed its initial run, and it had already gone to the second run feature, so it was probably been out 2 months or so. It was at the Cheaps, and where the cheap theater is here, my ex-in-laws lived right in the neighborhood, and I think we were at their house for dinner, and my ex was just going to be, gabbing with her mom all night, and I knew it, so I think I ditched out of their house. I'm like, I'm going to go see this movie, or else I had to go pick her up from someplace. Something happened, but I went to go see this. Had not seen a trailer, just you had told me about it, and just all you'd said is it's really, really great, and I think I sort of knew it was about drumming or about a kid, and I went and saw it, and that movie affected me so much that I walked out of the theater, sat down on a bench in the lobby, because I didn't want to drive, and I was like, I just had to sit there and process it and let it wash over me, and if I did not have to go pick up my ex-wife from someplace, like did not have a pre-arranged thing where I couldn't just call her on her cell and blow her off and say, yeah, I'll see. I would have gone right back in and saw it a second time.
Wow.
Like I contemplated what's the possibility of me just walking back into this and seeing it a second time because it was so amazing but it hit me so hard. Yeah. I loved it. So impactful, that scene, like, that I like quoting, not quite my tempo. Like you just said, super well edited, and J.K. Simmons' performance and Miles Teller's performance
he's so good.
And even Paul Reiser in a supporting role as the father. Dad. So many great things. You cannot say enough. This was Damien Chazelle's second film, I think.
Wow.
Like, that dude is like insanely good filmmaker. Like,
exactly.
Just unbelievable.
Young and gets, is... to understand how to craft.
This might have even been his first full-length feature.
I know this was a short film. I'd have to look at his list to see what he did.
Yeah, he originally did it as a short.
He did this as a short,
almost as a pitch tool to get. But oh my god,
yeah. So it could very well be
just amazing film, and super duper, and yes, absolutely on my list.
Yeah, I kind of figured.
So we just knocked one off. Yeah, because
there we go.
Damien Chazelle was a two-time director on here. So fantastic.
All right, back over to you.
All right. I will return the favor. I'm pretty sure I'm going to knock one off your list here.
Yeah.
From 2014, from director Alejandro Inarritu, Birdman.
Hey, that's my next film we're going to talk about. So here, 2 for 1.
We have just paired it up here. Oh, fantastic. Like a comeback film from Michael, or I don't know if comeback, but a great film for Michael Keaton to get back into the spotlight, people realizing what a fantastic actor he is. Inarritu, I think this was one of the first films where he really got recognized for what a fantastic filmmaker he is. I love the surreality of this film. Emma Stone, another great presence in here. Ed Norton's a great actor in here. I love, and it's done, it's not a literal one take. It's done as a synthetic one take. The entire film is supposed to be one continuous camera move or one take. But it does have a lot of long takes in it, and I'm a sucker for that. I love actors acting, and when they're so good into a role that it's more like watching a stage play, and this is just fantastic and obviously one of my favorite films of all time.
Well, and the one take that he does is just so brilliant because it's used as part of the narrative.
Yep.
And
it's not just the gimmick.
Yeah.
It also works into the narrative.
So we're going from one part of the theater of the character, and then he's entering another part of the theater. Even though we haven't cut away, we've all of a sudden jumped time. And so, in essence, we're using this one long take to follow a character in this sort of artificial moment, but where typically in other films you would get sort of a
crossfade or something. Yep.
No, we just go from one room to the next room, which is absolutely. When I was watching, I went, "Oh my god, that is so interesting! I haven't seen that before."
Because it's extremely difficult to do.
Oh yeah, and the staging and all those pieces would be incredibly difficult. And so, anytime there's a film experience, we're all saying like, "Okay, I haven't seen this before," and maybe that's another. Probably if we look at the top 10s, there's probably elements in each of these where like, "Okay, I haven't seen that before," and it resonates in ways that. It's just impressive.
I thought I thought using that as a storytelling tool, that one take, even though it's synthetic, it really kept me locked with those characters and with the story. There's not okay, we can take a breath now here and recollect ourselves. No, you're just constantly with it. So you are with Keaton on the journey that his character is specifically going on as all these other things are happening around him. But yeah, just love. And the performances are also fantastic. And it has like highly hyper realized moment, like where it can be like very ridiculous in moments. Ed Norton is just this absolutely over the top prima donna actor. And then there's very grounded moments like when he confronts the critic in the bar. and is really giving it to her about how she can just sit there on the outside as a critic, never having been a creator, never having put herself out there, and just casually rip apart other people's art and their dreams and the thing they put passion into without ever whatever. And like, such a valid criticism of critics, but like, I just, so much to love about Birdman.
Oh yeah, and the sound is incredible. Like so much.
Oh, the drums, the taiko drums or whatever it is that's in there, sort of.
And there's so much going on. Like the camera in that one take, we kind of define the space, but then there's so much sound that exists beyond the frame that's also part of what's going on. Whether it be the conversations with that Keaton's having, or all of a sudden there's a sound that's taking place, and it is such a atmospheric experience.
Yeah. And sort of meta, because his character in the film is a guy that once upon a time did superhero films, and now there's a real desire for him to come back and do that and have success, just like Keaton. Like, there would always be an interest in him coming back to possibly play Batman again or something, but he went off and did a lot of smaller films, and he's an artist, not just like, not to say that superhero actors are bad actors, but sometimes they are. But yeah, it's just an amazing film on so many levels.
And again, one, though, you wouldn't necessarily call it a big screen film because there isn't the explosions, there isn't a fight sequence, there isn't what people would associate with it. But because it's so technically astute, that I would say this is a big screen film to be enjoyed. Like to see the frame that big and to hear the sound and all the elements of the sound design. Also, we
referenced earlier how when you're in a cinema, it's a different mindset where you're not checking your phone, where if you're at home you would, and that this film is definitely designed for that.
I would say
you can't check out, you can't look at your phone, you have to be locked in. You're in a cinema, world. You can't pause, you can't whatever. You're in there, you're in. It's just a different mindset and environment. And this film is definitely made to be seen in a cinema.
Okay, that was my number 5 pick. Okay. So I think we're going back to you now. Is that right? Would that make sense, or should I go to my number 4? What makes sense here in terms
of...
Doesn't
matter. You want to hit 4?
How we unpacking
hit this? Number 4. We somehow tied up there, and right in the middle, too.
Yeah, isn't that wild?
That's crazy.
So we're now going to our top... Well, for me, the top 5. For you, the bottom half of the decade.
Okay.
So my number 4 may be one that's on your list. It's from 2011. It's from director Nicholas Winding Refn. Is my number 4 pick. It's Drive, which I know you have strong affection for as well.
It's absolutely on my list.
It's on your list too. There we go. So we're probably going to be chipping away.
There we go. In the studio, we have a large, oversized poster of it on the wall.
And so I know it's going to be on your list, and so I imagine probably down the stretch here we'll probably have a few of these where we're doubling up. But I have so much affection for this film as well, for so many reasons. First of all, the pastels and the cinematography, and the sound and the music and just the atmosphere and the space that it creates is wonderful. The character that Ryan Gosling plays it fits into the fable that it's projecting of the scorpion and the frog. Literally, he has it on his back.
He has the scorpion on the back of his jacket.
Right, and he's a driver, so he's actually carrying folks to and from. So in the movie, if anyone hasn't seen it, he's basically a hired driver.
If you haven't seen it,
I
highly recommend you turn off this podcast and just go listen to something else, because you shouldn't be listening to this. You're not wanted. No, I'm kidding. You are.
You are going to edit that out, right?
Yes, I will.
Okay. He's a hired driver who's very good at what he does. He's a stunt driver by day, by night. He is basically a hired driver for high-state criminals. And we see his talents in the first 5 minutes, and it's one of these scenes that I watch on repeat, at least once every couple of months, where I just watch that beginning sequence because I love it so much. And the cast is incredible. Like, it's just an incredible amount of actors. Like, you have
Ryan Gosling is absolutely fantastic in it, and he actually lobbied for less lines. He asked
there's not many lines in this film
to cut his dialogue down, because I guess they collaborated, and it both came to the place of where he's more effective when he doesn't talk. And Ryan Gosling, his silences are just so amazing, and his acting, because he is so understated in this film. He is so, even his expressions, everything about him is so withdrawn.
Yeah, and I would give credit to Refn for that, because to have so much confidence that he's still telling a story and he's still moving the narrative forward without any dialogue. But, you know, him and Carey
Mulligan is fantastic
in the
here.
same scene, not saying anything.
And there's scenes where neither of them is saying anything.
But yet we're moving the story forward because we know what's going on. We know what's being implicitly happening with these characters.
Phenomenally casted in those two.
Yeah.
The first thing I ever recall seeing Oscar Isaac in, and Oscar Isaac's fantastic in it.
He's great. Was that before or after Inside Llewyn Davis? I can't remember. Maybe before.
I'm not sure.
Yeah,
but
anyway, it was
Ron. Ron Perlman.
Yeah, exactly.
Fantastic.
Yeah. Albert Brooks,
fantastic. Like
Bryan Cranston.
Like, oh my God.
Christina Hendricks for good measure.
I just love this movie so much.
Yeah, it really works really well. And I think one thing the way it handles violence, is, I think, very effective.
It is.
So much you go to films and you see the big blockbuster films that handles violence in a very kind of cartoonish kind of way, where it almost becomes a bit mind-numbing. Here, it's explosive in a way that
I was just going to say that's
shocking.
how I would describe it. It is shocking and explosive.
And so then
it all of a sudden just it's there.
Yeah, and it's effective
and not like glorified. Not like not like what you'd call a cool fight scene or lots of cool choreography. It's just blunt and violent and just relentless in its moments, and then gone again.
Exactly. So there's a certain maturity to it, I would say, that comes with the territory. And of course, the soundtrack. I think I'd have to go through the list, but if I had to make, the top 10 soundtracks of the last decade, this film would definitely be on it. It is a phenomenal scores and phenomenal sounds that just creates this incredible.
Refn's another one of my favorite filmmakers right now.
Yeah.
Just because he creates such an incredibly layered, immersive cinematic experience in his films, and he's not one I don't love every single film he makes,
right.
But another one of his that was just off my list was The Neon Demon.
Oh yeah,
and
is that high on the list, eh?
Yeah, it was in my top 20 probably.
I enjoyed the atmosphere in it for sure.
I love The Neon Demon. Yeah. It was very, not to get off on the Neon Demon rant, but that one, it was very Kubrickian to me. Okay. It was extremely I think Nicholas Winding Refn is very deliberate as a filmmaker.
Yeah.
Everything happening is there for a reason. So everything in that frame, and I think that was really even more so than in Drive. In Neon Demon, it was very
deliberate,
focused and deliberate, and everything was very specifically where it was supposed to be. And different kinds of films, obviously, but I just love, like you said, the sound and the soundtrack and the editing and everything is just, and also it seems to me from the outside, like he's a very collaborative filmmaker. So like I said, I'd read that it was Ryan Gosling who said I should have less, and Refn's let's do that. Let's pull this all back in, just an amazing film.
Yeah, great film.
This was like a New Year's film for me. I saw it again at the Cheaps.
You see a lot of good films at New Year's.
New Year's and Christmas, baby. It's weird, yeah. A lot of my list is New Year's and Christmas, but yeah, I saw this, and it was also at the Cheaps at the time when the Cheaps were out on McGilvery.
Okay.
And at the time,
was that long ago? Eh?
It was. It
wow.
It played. Yeah, it played. It was playing there, and it was a New Year's Eve because my ex-wife, they had tickets from her work to go to a hockey game. I don't know if it was the Jets yet. Maybe it was the Jets. I'm not sure how long they've been back.
It was probably their first year back.
Probably their first year.
Which
so
would have been a big deal, right?
She was going to there, but with some work people. The workplace was kind of we have to. It's married couples wouldn't want to spend time together on New Year's. So I was no, you go to that. And, she was a bigger hockey fan than me anyway. So I'm you go to that. I think I dropped her off downtown. And then I was she would never have wanted to see this. She was not a cinephile like me. She would never have wanted to see Drive, which is probably why I didn't see it initially in its theatrical run. So I'm but I heard so many good things about it. I'm going to go check this out. And wow, so amazing. I was so happy. What a fantastic film.
That'd be what a way to
bring back, end my year. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. If this was at a revival screening, absolutely. 100%.
All right. Back over to you.
All right, moving on. I feel like maybe I'm about to knock one off your list. I'm not sure here. American Hustle from director David O. Russell.
Right on.
The opening scene of Christian Bale creating his comb over.
Yes.
And just that the camera just stood there and hung out with us and did this. And and I'm yeah, you knew it. That this is going to be my favorite film this year.
I love that scene because right away we know his character. Like even his hair is fake.
Exactly. So much of him is it's that using that scene, and you don't even know this about the character. We're just meeting the character, but in that opening with no dialogue, before they do any sort of thing, he just creates that, like, you know who Christian Bale is in that moment, and just an amazing film. Amy Adams is amazing in it. Jennifer Lawrence is amazing in it. Bradley Cooper is amazing in it. I love Jeremy Renner. Jeremy Renner's fantastic in it. Like on and on and on. Just an amazing film. David O. Russell can be a character. Apparently, he's can be polarizing. Some people hate working with him, and other people love working with him. But this crew, he just seemed to get the best out of him. Again, another very collaborative filmmaker, apparently by anecdote, and working with people like Bale, who just love to, Christian Bale be a guy that just loves to create character and do stuff and be very method, and that soup just comes together amazing. You throw all those ingredients together, and easily on my list. Like, if I was ranking, this would be in the top 3 for me.
Oh wow! And just so many great scenes in this film.
Another one that I watch over and over again.
And you can easily okay, let's look up this scene. Let's look up the scene of where they're dancing to Donna Summer's "I Feel Love," right?
And
they're at the discotheque, and I could just watch that scene over and over again. It's just such a great moment in that film, and it's a film of many great moments.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And I don't know, like, do you pick sides when you're watching this movie?
What's that?
Like, when you're watching the movie, do you find, like, do you feel like, hey man, I got to sort of pick a side here and figure out who I'm with?
Yeah.
But
who you gonna put? Which characters you feel?
I don't know. It's so tough. I always just love Bale, but I'm kind of like I always feel Cooper. But like Bradley Cooper, he's not really. He's a bit of a jerk, but he's not really a bad guy. He actually should be the antagonist almost in the situation. He's trying to fight crime, but he just ends up being an asshole, and but just an amazing.
But it's a good ensemble.
And and for Bradley Cooper, also, I really admire him, and he's a very brave actor, that he takes the jerk roles, and he plays it where, as a guy who someone in Hollywood right now that has that classic Hollywood leading man looks, and in a different era or with a different agent, he might try to protect himself, so to speak, and just play leading men. He really takes on a lot of roles, and this one is a really great one of just being a dick.
Well, and Bradley Cooper, we've talked about before, his immense talents in many different avenues and arenas is just simply not fair.
What an asshole.
Yeah.
But I love American Hustle.
I do
much.
too. It's I believe I had it in my top 20, but did not quite crack the
really?
top 10 for me.
Did not. Boy, I would have lost folding money there, because I would have bet you would have.
Yeah, because I really did enjoy it, but just when things came, push to shove, it just didn't quite hit the list for me. But it's a great pick. I definitely enjoyed that film this last decade for sure.
All right, back over to you.
All right, so my number 3 is a Spike Jonze film from 2013, a film that I find myself thinking about all the time, and I think that's the reason why I have it on my list, is because from time to time it will just pop in my head. Her. And I'm not sure if you have it on your list or not.
Her. It's not on my list. It was on my top 20, but it didn't crack my top 10, but I love her.
And just there's so much of this film I do enjoy, from again, I talk a lot about cinematography and sound, but to me, when it works really well, it just elevates a film, and it certainly does here. Like, there's a softness to the look, and what's refreshing is, here's a sci-fi film that is not about, any kind of...
It's not about ray guns.
No, it's not about ray guns.
It's true science fiction.
It's not about, how the world's going to be taken over by, insert aliens, insert robots, insert whatever. However, it is sort of actuated by technology in a sense, but the humanity of what that comes with and how people react to, I think, is something very, that you can actually, like as I do, think about from time to time. And just Joaquin Phoenix and the emotions that he invokes in his connection to something that isn't a person, but is represented by a person's voice. Was just, I find myself going, that can't be easy. Joaquin Phoenix, just to be able to evoke this emotional relationship he has with a voice, which is representing an operating system. There's still such a profound relationship that he has. It's an investment that I've made in that film that, it certainly felt more human to me and a real relationship than a lot of other films where both characters are, are not a robot, or are not, in this case, a phone or operating system. So I enjoyed it, and again, great supporting cast. Amy Adams is in it as well, and she's always wonderful. Just a great film, great screenplay.
It is. It's fantastic.
And great music by Arcade Fire throughout. It's just a very unique experience that Spike Jonze does. And for me, it's one of the tops that I enjoyed this last 10 years.
Yeah, it wasn't on. Yeah, like I said, it wasn't on. It was on. I think around my top 20. It was in there somewhere. But I love this film. It is like the truest form of science fiction. Like,
yeah.
I enjoy ray gun movies and action and whatever, but real science fiction, and those movies are often called science fiction just because they have a futuristic setting.
Yeah.
True science fiction is using a futuristic or an element to recontextualize and examine, like, to be able to say, maybe even make the audience more comfortable with examining an issue that in the context of our contemporary times could be difficult for people to grapple with, but if you take it out and recontextualize it, now how do you feel? And maybe it can allow you to revisit an issue or something for some people, if a person had, an emotional context to that issue, maybe it would take that away and maybe change their mind. So I love that, even if I don't have those emotional contexts to the particular issue. And I felt this film was, and you can, I don't know if I'm right or not, after watching it, I thought what he was talking about here was interracial relationships. Where this was sort of, if you look at it, if you take out the idea that Samantha is an operating system, but instead, what if this was a white man and a black girl, or a Mideastern person, or just two people of different ethnic backgrounds, and they will be socially ostracized. So in here, it's sort of taking it to and I don't want to say ridiculous and say that I'm discounting the issue, but by making it now, it's not even a person, it's an operating system, and people are getting so weird about it. And I thought maybe he was taught, sort of like examining that in there.
Yeah, interesting.
And it's sort of a reverse. Like I said, like sometimes science fiction will take it and change it so now it's not an issue, where maybe nowadays interracial relationships aren't such a big deal. So nowadays we're not weirded out by seeing a white girl and a black guy, or even like gay couples out in public now, and it's more in the media. This doesn't bother us. But here it's like taking it back, and here we're going to change it and make, what's the next thing? Maybe examining to sort of ask, have we really learned that lesson? Have we really come to realize that people or a sentience is just things, and it's okay for people of different ethnic backgrounds or people of the same sex to love each other or whatever and be out, and this is to be acceptable, versus now he's going, well, what's the next thing somebody might fall in love with that we're going to ostracize them for? And here it was that operating system. And some of the people were ostracized. Like, he sort of kept it quiet and felt like he'd be ostracized for that, and people would laugh at him or like, what? How can you be in love with your phone?
Yeah.
But is it ridiculous? Or like, what's any different? If it's a sentient life, it's, what's the difference?
Well, and I do think, and like great sci-fi, it is a bit of a peek into a window that's coming down the pipe. And I could see people having fulfillment in relationships with maybe things that are not necessarily entirely or things that are not human or that are objects in a sense. I could see that because, and for me, I didn't necessarily take it to the level that you're examining it. Like for me, it was all about, kind of in a world where we have great mass communication and the ability to reach out and connect with people, yet we're probably the most isolated and lonely time of our era, just because somehow we have ostracized ourselves to the point of where his character writes cards for a living, that
letters, essentially forgeries.
That other people hire him to write because we've lost that ability to really connect and communicate. And one thing I find fascinating as an educator is you're reading about where a bit of that sort of futurist kind of perspective of how we're probably not too far off where we're going to have to teach young people about how to read body language and how to do facial recognitions, and in terms of how to engage in people socially, just because it's an aspect that is being lost that would be natural things people would pick up that are not so much natural anymore. And in fact, now we're having classes called adulting, what it means to do these sort of lessons that that people just inherently were able to learn through the modeling of others, but yet we're not quite there. We've lost some, and this is not to say that technology is bad. It's just the way we communicate is very different. And so for me, it was all about this sort of inability to make connections. And he's found a connection that for him is very real and coming from a very human place, but it's not with a human. And so that's kind of interesting how you would blend.
Is it real or is it not? Like, what makes it?
Yeah.
And like you said, you brought up that in the film, Joaquin Phoenix's character, his job is to write these fake letters for people.
Yeah.
Birthday cards, letters, love letters, whatever for people. So it's examining that in a world where we're becoming, like disconnected, that people don't even write their own letters for themselves. But he's shown to be very good at it, writing letters, and he's very good at expressing emotions through writing and through communication. But yet in his personal life, it was shown that he had a relationship that had broken up because he couldn't communicate. Yeah. So it's like this great, duality there. But then he is able to form a communication with something he's comfortable talking about, his phone. But when it becomes an intelligence and a real, person, so what's the difference? But it's and this is how he's found a connection. So just so many great questions.
Yeah.
Great. And all art is always at its best when it's asking questions, not answering them.
That's right.
And science fiction so much more so that this film is really great about starting discussions and giving you lots to talk about.
And I think that's the beauty of this film, is that it is one that's going to make, you'll think about it at different times. Mm-hmm. All of a sudden it'll pop in your head because of, an article you read, or all of a sudden a technology you've seen, or a technology that's been advanced. So saying that kind of reminds me of that movie. And which is always kind of neat when the film sort of relives in a way that's beyond the end credits, which is always why I always enjoy watching films again, because, sometimes,
this is one I've definitely taken more from the more times I see it.
Exactly. Warren in his 40s may have a different experience with a film than Warren in his 30s did. And so I always enjoy watching films again, and films like this that I always, I catch myself thinking about this, so I need to go watch that again to see why, to what depth does that resonate with me. And
the film also does ask the question of could you have a relationship with an operating system? Yeah. Is that wrong? Is it right? It doesn't give an answer. It doesn't at the end tell you yes or no. The end of the film is just that relationship ends, not because all of a sudden he realizes, oh, I can't, you're fake, or this is wrong, or you're going to take over the world. No, it's just they break up just because they go apart, and she evolves into a different thing and just goes away. And in the end, the relationship has ended just like any other one would.
Yeah.
But just fantastic film. Great pull. Yeah. Great pull.
Yeah.
All right, where were we?
Back to you.
Back to me. Okay, and this is just because of how we've overlapped a few. This is my final one.
This is your final one?
This is my last one.
All right.
All the way back to 2010. And back to, once again, one of my favorite directors, Chris Nolan. This is Inception.
Okay, which I'm going to pause for a sec here. Is my number one, which is my last one. So we're going to be finishing off our list with the same film.
Pause then. Give me your next one, and then let's just
No. That's it. Well, my next one was La La Land.
Okay.
Which is my number 2.
Okay.
Which we already talked about, so I just said we'll skip over.
Well,
so the last film I have to talk about is the same film as yours.
Inception,
yeah.
the pinnacle.
That's hilarious.
And I don't know if I rank, but if I rank, this would stand a very good chance of being my number one.
Yeah. And it is my number one.
Incredibly well written, well structured film. In that it breaks, and such an incredible filmmaker, Chris Nolan. This breaks rules in terms of. In the context of the film, it breaks reality rules. Its visual style is constantly showing the physics of our world being broken and the rules that are malleable. But then also, and Chris Nolan breaks rules in here that this movie is probably 70% exposition.
Yeah, that's not true.
But it works, and it's so entertaining, and he finds a way to even though it's so much exposition, and the first rule of filmmaking, as it's a visual storytelling medium, is show, don't tell. but there's just so many high concept ideas, and the idea of here, it was just impossible to show. So he told, but even though when you watch it, and like, you know, if I were to critically pick it apart and I sit there and I go on a checklist and go, yeah, that's just exposition, but yet it's so entertaining, it still works. And then the times when it's doing those, like folding the world on itself is so visually mind-blowing.
Yeah.
I just love it so much. So fantastically cast. Everything about this film is just amazing.
Well, it's the concept. It's such high
concept. Yeah.
We talked earlier about sort of that art house epic. I would say this is one of those art house epic films. Like it is, you know, he's kind of an art house. He's taking these ideas that is very cerebral, but he presented it in a very entertaining and mind-blowing visual way. That, you know, once you start kind of unpacking the film, you can actually go probably a little bit mad, because there's sort of a circular logic in terms of how he's created these worlds, like these dream worlds, the layers. Yeah. And when you start thinking about kind of how they interrelate and how the rules sort of impact and how, you know, and you start unpacking that, it is so, I guess maybe you can use the word sophisticated or so intricate that it is actually kind of a wild, like unique experience unto itself on how it defines that walking away from that film, it almost now going to be, if anybody ever wants to talk about a dream world, to some degree, they have to kind of incorporate an Inception-like element to it, because he's so strongly has invaded that space.
And defined it.
Yeah. This is kind of what happens if you go within a dream.
Yeah.
And now it's going to be hard for anyone else to do that in a different narrative, in a different way, in a different story, to do a dream within a dream without having kind of the rules of what he has.
And it's so amazing, because it's a science fiction film in regards of, it's a different kind of science fiction film than we just finished talking about, in that it uses a technology MacGuffin to say that we can do things that we can't do in our real world, to then change a heist film into, it's a heist film, but it's about being inside people's mind and in their dreams and breaking into someone's mind to steal, you know, and you're not even stealing a critical bit of speech, to actually place a bit of information in there to change and do whatever. But it's so amazing, and it's got so many levels. And like I just finished saying on the last one, that, you know, great art is about asking questions. This poses so many questions that when you're done watching this film, every time you're watching it, people can debate at the end. Endlessly. Is Leo DiCaprio's character Cobb, is he in a dream still at the end? Did he escape or did he not?
Yeah.
And you can't have that, like, there's...
You can double down on whichever element you want to go with.
It's got that fantastic Christopher Nolan ending that I think he always ends his films really fantastically, that at the last moment, you're almost like, often with the end of his films, I'm like, out of breath, because I'm like, oh my God, that last moment. And this one has the spinning top that is Cobb's physical totem of knowing when he's in a dream world and when he's not.
Yeah, it's wobbly.
And he just leaves it spinning on the table and goes off to talk to his children that he hasn't seen in a long time in the real world, but is he in the real world or not? And it just, the camera pushes in on that top, and just before it cuts, it starts to wobble just a little bit and then cuts, and you're like, was that a wobble or wasn't it?
Yeah.
And like 10 years later, and you can still debate with people, because you'll find people that think he escaped, you can find people that think he didn't.
Well, and that's the great thing about art, is that, you know, who does it belong to? Is it the artist himself who creates it? Is it does it belong to the audience who views it, or can art be art for art's sake, that it belongs to itself? And, you know, great art has that kind of, you know, it incorporates a bit of the experience of the person who's looking at it. And so as somebody who looks at that, and I certainly, when I watch a Christopher Nolan film, I have my take on it, but I recognize that that's my take on it, because I'm connecting it to this, to this, to this. I'm finding the pieces connect in this way for me. However, I might be talking to somebody else who's connecting with it in a different kind of way, because they've chose to unpack it differently, and which creates just meaningful and great depth dialogue. It's not just a straight A to B to C story. It's something that can be layered and have some different meanings for different people, depending on their life experiences that they kind of walk into this with. And again, great cast. The scene where they are, you know, they all sort of do their final wake at the end, right before they get off the plane. I use that scene all the time as, okay, here's, you know, the meaning behind the framing of shots and the type of shots used, I'll use that scene because it is a beautiful scene cinematically of when Nolan chooses to use a close up versus a medium shot versus a wide shot. There's so much narrative in each of one of those shots that he sets up that creates such great meaning that he uses it to tell what's going on in that moment and how we react to it in such a strong way that it's incredible. To me, it's an incredible film.
A brilliant score from Hans Zimmer, who has done most of Nolan's films and is just
talk about soundtracks that are top 10 of the year. That would be one.
It's just a brilliant score.
Yeah.
And I think too that Chris Nolan, why he's one of my favorite filmmakers is, like I said, like in most of his films, he asks questions. And like I said, not to be too hoity-toity or highfalutin here, great art asks questions. But I also feel that he leaves the space open, that he asks those questions and lets the film go and doesn't try to tell you an answer. And it invites the conversation.
Yeah.
Where lesser filmmakers will kind of ask a question and then I'm going to tell you what the answer is because I'm going to sew this up with a bow because if audiences go out, whatever, I don't trust them and people will then, not like my film because they'll think it's not got an ending on it. But Nolan has the wisdom and the courage to ask the question and then just let the film have the conversation.
Exactly.
And so the audience becomes more invested in your film because now we're part of it because we're part of the conversation and that conversation is still going on 10 years later. Yeah. And he doesn't then give interviews and try to answer it. Like you'll watch him in interviews, and when I'll say dumb reporters or somebody will try to that don't get it, will try to nail him down. Okay, so what's the deal? So is he or isn't he? It's the same thing Ridley Scott went through for decades with people asking him if Deckard was a replicant at the end at the end of it. It's like no, there's a reason we didn't answer it in the film. There's a reason because you need to have the conversation. So don't ask me my answer. What's your answer?
And I would say Memento's like that too, right? Where to me, I certainly got my meaning out of the film based on the imagery that I saw. But I'll have debates with people in terms of what it means to them, and just like this film. And speaking of Hans Zimmer, time is the music I use to wake up every day.
Me too.
Yeah, that's my alarm. I set my alarm to it. So
me too. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, that's my kick.
That's the kick. Just an amazing film. And I've seen it I saw it. I bet I saw it 4 times in its initial run. And I've seen it at least one more time. It was a few years back. It was at the classic film. It was actually at the Flashback Film Festival.
I'd love to see it again in the
and
big
it
theater.
ran. Yeah, that was a great one. That was I think my best year at the Flashback when it was running because it was on a Friday. I only worked a half day, took the afternoon off, and in the afternoon I saw Star Trek: The Wrath of Khan, and then had a dinner break and an early show of Serenity, the Firefly film, and then the late show was Inception.
Nice.
What a great day! But
yeah. And films I always adore. To me, metaphorically it talks about the films and filmmaking process. It brings in film itself as part of the narrative. This idea that you're implanting an idea in people, is very much
it's in essence a film about filmmaking.
That's what filmmakers do is they're planting ideas in us and trying to make those synapses connect in ways that.
I also really resonate to Nolan's films because he is a cinema guy. He wants his films to be seen in a cinema.
Isn't that true?
He's so obsessive to the point of it that he wants his trailers to be seen in cinema. He apparently didn't even want to put out a trailer to his latest film, Tenet. Right. On the internet. And eventually he had to bow to, you have to, it's marketing. We have to put it out.
Right.
But at the end of the trailer that you can see on YouTube for Tenet, there's a message that comes up that says, for full effect, see this trailer in cinemas.
Oh,
and I'm like,
really?
Well, yeah, tell me what movie it's playing in front of, and I'll absolutely go see it. But
drop a ticket just to watch the trailer.
I probably would, but right there, it's he's even no, even my trailers. He goes, no, you got to see this in a cinema to get the full effect. I'm like, so I will always champion the cause of Chris Nolan.
Oh yeah, and of course he uses practical effects as much as possible.
Oh yeah, exactly.
And even in this, incorporating the train.
Yeah, it doesn't hurt that a lot of my personal philosophies and beliefs about what should be cinema just lines up with what he is. He's he would definitely be the pastor at the church that I would go to.
Yeah. Well, those both, we ended on the same note. That was my number one, and that was your best of 2010.
Yeah, we could not have planned that, and to be honest, we did not plan that. No, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
That was an amazing decade.
Great decade of films.
Any other thoughts thrown out there? Anything?
You know what? It's funny that we touched on a few different genres. Like we talked about sci-fi quite a bit, and I would say some of the best sci-fi films have been from the last decade. Certainly, we talked about a little bit about animation. There's been some really creative and interesting animation done. We talked about sort of that sort of neo-western, and there's been some great films. We haven't talked about documentaries, but this last decade, there's been significant and impactful documentaries. It's kind of interesting how, you know, if we were to look like best all times type of stuff, I have debates about that. I would say that, you know, we'd see this last decade have films that would represent that, because I think
a good chunk.
Yeah, I think the genres are you know, and this could just be because audiences are becoming more sophisticated. We're getting, you know, lots more media altogether. But I think in terms of genres themselves, there's some really interesting things going on in each one we could look at and take a peek at. Even comedies, let's say. Like, we didn't talk about a lot of comedies, but there's been some significant voices that coming out. You know, certainly, like, you know, take a film like Bridesmaids, which might not be in our top 10 list, but all of a sudden, you know, you know, to have the female voice be very active, like it has been this last decade, is really significant and important. That's where the stories are. You know, and then Bridesmaids is more than just, you know, females being raunchy as much as guys can be raunchy. You know, there's you know, things that are to be said there. So if you're going to ask me about the decade, I would say, you know what, I'm kind of excited to see what the next decade brings, because I think there's been some solid momentum in the genres themselves that I'm kind of curious to see where all this goes.
It's been, and you hit a good point there too. It's been a big decade for female filmmakers.
Yeah.
And even though her films didn't end up on my top 10, Greta Gerwig.
Yes.
Lady Bird, director of Lady Bird, and now just the newly released remake of Little Women. You know, both fantastic. Particularly, like, Lady Bird's really good one. Like, you know, on a different day, Lady
that
Bird
could easily be in a top 10.
Could have jumped up further on my list
for sure.
But yeah, just fantastic filmmaker, and I'm excited to see more from her. But yeah, it's just been a crazy decade, and it was tough for me to go through this and look at this, and
you know,
I don't know what the format this show will be on in 10 years when we do the next decade.
Yeah. And what's, you know, with now the streaming, how big that's been over the last decade, that's
like,
going to lead to.
What's going to change? Like, you know, Roma, you know, landed on my list, which was primarily a streaming one. But, you know, what happens when they stop showing movies in cinemas largely, you know, or a lot of these movies. Like,
I hope they never stop.
I hope. I don't think we'll ever stop seeing films in cinema.
No, I don't think so either.
That's been a big story this past decade too, like outside of the films themselves, like kind of like the rise of streaming and the, you know, to be honest, the attempts by certain entities like Netflix to think that they're going to, like, you know, for their own ends, destroy the cinema experience and somehow undermine the cinema business. But, you know, I don't think it's ever going to go away. I think, you know, just like, you know, once upon a time we had too many gas stations, so a bunch of them went away. You know, for living in a small city, we have a lot of cinemas.
Which is great.
It is great.
Yeah.
It's annoying that sometimes those smaller films sneak by and don't land in the market, that a lot of our cinemas are tending to show the same 5 ones.
Yeah, no, that's the only thing I was going to say. Is I wish there was more diversity in the films themselves.
Like a lot of the smaller films only show it like that really dumpy theater downtown that I won't go into because you're just going to get bed bugs or who knows what else from that thing. Like, you know, if you go there, you got to order a popcorn, a soda, and a shot of penicillin. But it's like...
But we're getting a new cinema, which is...
We are getting a brand new cinema in the
really
next year, which is very exciting.
Yeah, and see what that looks like.
And also possibly the rise of Cineplex possibly bringing in a subscription service for us. Oh, man.
Yeah, we've certainly seen the landscape change at Landmark.
Yeah.
You know, the fact that, you know, not only can we... have pre-bought tickets and have our seats assigned, but for those seats actually recliners,
seating, more comfortable than my bed.
Lots of room, and it's.
If I could just move in at Landmark Cinemas and just somehow have pay rent there, that'd be fantastic.
And so now, if you add, you know,
a subscription
service to that mix, oh wow, it's gonna be interesting to see where film goes for sure for the next 10.
I think also too with a big story in film would be like over the past 10 years, the rise of YouTube. As a place that a lot of young filmmakers that they don't even have to go to a film school. They now have a place to put out their product, to put out their art, and a lot of people can see it. You know, they're not just showing it on a bed sheet to 5 people in the backyard. And like that, it's going to be interesting to see the filmmakers that come out of that sort of a background, and then, you know, their films do make it to cinema. And how's that going to be different?
Exactly. They have a means to
I hope a lot more. Or I hope that we're going to see a more diverse more artistic films, where right now And there's also a story to be said right now that, like, with the Walt Disney Corporation now owning 75% of the film industry, could things become very homogenized and very Disney-fied, and where every film coming out is the same? But hopefully there's always going to be that niche for indie filmmakers, and I think YouTube is a place where a lot more of them will grow from, and young kids will get to make a thing and go, hey, I made a thing and people saw it and reacted to it. And because they can get the real-time reaction back from an audience of people putting comments on and talking about, and I think it'd be a great place that, we're probably going to see I hope we're going to see some really great artistic films in the next 10, 20 years, people coming from that.
Well, and I think there's an appetite for it too. Yeah, like
it's another thing too. So right. YouTube can prove that there's an appetite when some strange little artistic thing, when you can look and actually go, oh, how many views did this get? Oh, this got 1 billion views. Well, that really, to a large degree, is really taking the power away from the gatekeepers of saying who can make a film and who can't.
Well, a testimony of that is Sandberg, the director of Lights Out. Yep. Like here he does, an incredible online short film called Lights Out as well. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden he gets I can't remember who basically gave him a contract, but basically said, okay, here's a little bit of money. Let's make it into a feature. It gets $5 million, grosses over $50 million. And then he goes on to do, I think, Annabelle 2 and the other films that he's gone on to. And I think we might see more of that, where all of a sudden, the champions of people who are already in the industry saying, you know what, I'm going to take a chance on this person here because what they're doing is pretty spectacular. I think if they just have a little bit of money, a little bit of backing behind them, and that's the way to go. And ultimately, I always, one thing's from time to time, I'll get students come talk to me about, can you tell me about film schools? And I said the best film school is grabbing a camera and just finding your voice.
Just go and do,
Find your voice, like watch films, emulate that. And I'm not knocking film schools that they don't teach, but there's certainly an element of teaching to what the industry is, as opposed to teaching what strong narrative is.
Film school can help teach technique, and like you said, to the way that the industry wants it to be.
But if you want to be fresh, here's a whole avenue.
You don't have to go that route. Yeah. You can make quote Hollywood films, and you can go do that, and there's no problem with that. But you can also just be a pure artist.
Yeah.
You can take art lessons that can tell you how to make the proper brushstroke and how to hold and how to mix your colors and what a proper palette is. But they can't teach you to be Picasso.
Yeah.
I can take classes from now till Rapture, and I'm never going to be, Rembrandt. So
I never know.
No, highly doubt it. I'm a paint by numbers at best.
The way you have your Funkos laid out is very artistic.
No, it's not. But anyways, this has been awesome. Thanks for making it today. This
great decade.
This was a great decade, and I can't wait for the next one. And maybe we can get together soon, hopefully, and we have some more ideas for episodes.
Absolutely, let's hammer a few of these out.
And also, I did want to say too, and for the 5 people that might be listening, check out Pump Your Stuff.
Oh, okay. Well,
I don't know if you want to put out your personal Facebook, but pump out your Instagram.
Well, basically, I don't care if people, if any of the 5 people who are listening.
Okay, talk about what you've been doing, because you've been doing something called Must See Movies.
Yeah.
And I have been loving it. So please,
tell it.
Yeah, shout it out. Talk about Must See Films for a minute. Must See Movies.
So this last August, which is going back 4 months, 5 months, whatever it's been. I as a lead up to this idea I had to launch a website, I decided to pick a day. Basically it's every day I match up a movie to the day that it is. And sorry, I'm a really convoluted way of.
Sorry, I threw you under the bus here. I didn't. Okay. I should have prepared you for that. I was going to.
So I'm going to backtrack a little bit here. Okay, so basically in August I started through Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just noting the day and matching to a film. And I guess the idea is in the era, and we've talked about this in streaming, you get this sort of paralysis moment of, okay, with all this selection that I can possibly pick, what's a good movie that I want to see today? And so for me, I've sort of celebrated whatever day it is. Like, for example, yesterday I talked about Exorcist because it was released on, now we're recording this on December 27th. Yesterday was December 26th, and so it was released in December 26th, 73. So I matched it up that way. Sometimes there might be a particular holiday. I'll match up a film to that. And so what I'm sort of aiming at doing is not only highlighting films that I wish would be on my streaming services that sometimes are not there, or for ones that are there, I want to say, hey, here's a perfect day. Let me take this selection for you, and here's a film to watch on this day. And so that's what I've been doing. And at first I was going to try and do it for, I was kind of targeting 10 days to 14 days, but people's reactions have been pretty positive. So now it's kind of been every day I try and, make a connection and doing that. And where it's going to lead to, well, we'll see. Originally it was going to be a launch for a website, but because of all kinds of reasons, that hasn't launched yet, not for any other than just pure time of being able to be able to want to launch it at so that way it's fully.
Life is what happens when you're busy making other plans.
That's right.
For good and bad.
Exactly. So that's going to be in the works, at which sometime this concept will navigate to that. But in the meantime, I'm just having a good time just every day talking about a film, and here's a good film to watch. And sometimes they're films everyone's seen and heard of and absolutely love, and sometimes they're little indie films that I've grabbed and watched and said, you know what, more people need to know about this. That's
been my journey with it. There are times when you put ones that are like my favorite movies, and there's times there's ones in there I've never heard of, or I have, but they're like big holes in my viewing history that I've just never gotten around to. And I'm like, I got to get this on a streaming service so I can see this. But no, every day it's like a thing I look forward to every day, like finding out what your must-see is going to be of that day. And sometimes even some of them have sparked some conversations in your comments too.
Oh, absolutely. And I guess that's what's kind of interesting in all this. So we talked a bit about technology earlier, is just the fact that, there's been friends I haven't spoke to in a decade, right?
Yeah.
Over the last 10 years, but all of a sudden now we're having, conversations, or people are reaching out, saying, how much they enjoyed it, or making suggestions. It's kind of neat, actually. Where some of this conversation is
So shout out your handles. How can people find movies?
So basically, if you type in Warren Nightingale and looked in Facebook, or Warren 24FPS for Instagram, or Screen Pop feed
24 FPS.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, Warren 24 FPS for Instagram, Warren Nightingale Facebook, and then
what's the Twitter?
Twitter is a Film Pop feed, and so those are the three avenues that the must-sees see. So anyone, feel free to join. Actually, I've had people join all these because they stumbled across it and they've asked to come across. So it's a lot of fun.
It's
great conversation.
It's fun to read.
Yep. There we go. Thanks for the plug.
I've learned stuff.
I wasn't even thinking about that, so
I'm not just doing this to plug this because you're
it,
like my most frequent, co-host and whatever, and you're one of my best friends. I really legitimately have really enjoyed it, and it is legitimately like a thing I look forward to every day.
Awesome.
Seeing what the must-see is going to be.
Yeah, no, wicked. Now I just have to do one for tonight.
Fantastic. Rock. You've hit him more than once. You've hit him right at that buzzer at midnight. So.
That's right. That's fun.
All right, man.
Hey, thanks for having me. This was a great time.
It was, and we got to do it more often again. So hopefully this year we will get back on track here. We've been off for a few months, but maybe we can get everything back on a bit of a schedule.
Looking forward to it.
All right, and thanks. And I have no out. So until next time.